Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 141 of the In a Nutshell podcast. I'm your host, Sean Vowells. I've got Joe Meade with me. And tonight, it's Saturday, March 7th. It's a late one, but we're getting on to recap some of the past week of games here. Joe, obviously, there's still some regular season games tomorrow, but today will be mostly recapping the last week of the regular season. Then we will be back in a few days to preview the upcoming Big Ten tournament. So there's the Big Ten standings as we currently record. Now there's two games in progress and one that still has to be played tonight. And then tomorrow there's four more games. So you're just going to have to bear with us now. But Joe, let's go back to Tuesday for a second. We did have UCLA sort of stamp their spot in the NCAA tournament. They go the entire season just losing one game at home, and not a single team was able to sweep the LA trip. UCLA beats Nebraska 72-52, and the Bruins have been an up and down team this year, but it looks like there's just enough ups to make the tournament.
Not only just enough ups. I mean, the way this current game we're currently recording, they're up 12 at USC. I don't think they're going to lose that game. Ever since kind of that Michigan road trip, I know they had the Minnesota loss. I think they've played really good basketball. I'm going to be honest with you, Sean. I uh, I know Mick Cronin gets a lot of flack for his antics, like off the court, like during his post game pressers, and then on the court for some of the things he did. But this is a good basketball team. I think ultimately it's a good, solid NCAA tournament team. I think they probably win a game, but I don't think they win a game. They do better than getting to the round of 32. Certainly not further than the Sweet 16. So UCLA really good on them. I like in this game, Sean, how they got contribution from Trent Perry. I thought that was really key for them. They have a lot of good guys who could go off. I'm not going to say go completely off on any given night, but they have a talented team. And I think inevitably, if you played 30 games, they were always going to win 20 or 21 games this year. So
Yeah,
I think kind of just,
I think Dent wasn't the top of the line player that they maybe wanted, but they have four really solid players. And like you said, Perry has stepped up since Sky Clark was injured. Perry sort of got forced into it. Now Clark has come back to supplement that. But look, I think this is sort of the Mick Cronin formula in this year. Like it's not going to be pretty. Obviously, they're not going to be great outside their home arena because they don't travel well, but they're good enough to beat a good team on a day, and that's what they did here. In terms of Nebraska, Joe, they play tomorrow, right? So we're not going to talk about them again. I think they play
no,
Iowa tomorrow.
well, they're pretty much locked into the two or three in the
Yeah,
Big Ten tournament. So I don't think there's much to discuss. And really,
yeah, but
it's
there's
nothing to do with Nebraska. It's more so with Michigan State, Michigan
well, yeah, I was
tomorrow.
just going to say there's not another game to discuss Nebraska because it hasn't happened yet, but. Obviously they had that great start to the year. I do think that water has found its level a little bit. They rely heavily on the 3-point line, and we've seen that this year that tends to bring a little bit of inconsistency. In terms of Illinois, Joe, they were able to beat Oregon 80-54 on Tuesday. Not much to report there. And then on Wednesday we had a bunch of consequential games. Let's start in Bloomington and with Indiana, my team. Obviously, a big result today against a big loss against Ohio State today. But Joe, with the catastrophic disaster that is happening on the bubble right now, somehow Indiana still has a chance. They're able to beat Minnesota by 30. They lose to Ohio State today by 13. But Indiana's a sinking ship, but everybody else is sinking with them.
Yeah, it's kind of the contest of who doesn't want to go to the NCAA tournament. Somehow Indiana is not winning that contest, which is actually a good thing for the Hoosiers. I do think, Sean, gun to your head, they're going to have to win. Definitely win one in Chicago. Am I crazy?
Yeah, I would say two probably. But and I'm doing another bracketology tomorrow. But Joe, if they're in the field and everybody loses, they have to stay in the field because
Yeah.
if they're ahead of a team before and then both teams lose, nobody got better. Indiana, in fact, with a certain result that happened today, I can guarantee you they're going to get another quad one win. And then if this other one holds the way it is, they might be getting another quad two win also. So despite getting blown out, Indiana might have been the winners of the day. But they take care of business here against Minnesota. Joe, we'll go to this game now because we just talked about it. But Ohio State, like UCLA did on Tuesday, essentially books their spot in the tournament with a 91-78 win over the Hoosiers. It wasn't particularly close. Bruce Thornton gets the record for the most points all time in Ohio State history, and at this point, Joe, the Buckeyes are playing like way better than they were the rest of the year, and they are trending up going into the tournament. And I don't know wherever they're going to lie, a 9 or a 10 seed, but when it comes to teams, making a run that we don't expect, maybe the Buckeyes might be one of those teams.
Yeah, I think really the turning point of their season, Sean, was that game against Wisconsin where they were without both Mobley and they're without both Mobley and
Tilly.
pretty limited Devin Royal and Tilly.
Oh,
And
yeah, no, I think Tilly did play that one actually, yeah. But he missed some
yeah.
other games.
And then they followed up with the game at the Breslin where Bruce Thornton really carried them. Michigan State kind of shot poorly. And then they just ran Purdue off their floor, I thought, last Sunday. So,
Yeah, they've had
aside from
three big wins against tournament plus bubble teams on their home floor, whether it was Wisconsin, Purdue, and now Indiana. So as everyone else is trending down, Joe, they are trending up, and based on where they're probably going to be at, I'm assuming they're going to be in the 8-9 game with Iowa. Like that's not a bad loss. So I think Ohio State is very clearly in right now, no matter what. And I think at this point they're playing for seeding, and they might be able to get as high as a 9.
Yeah, and what's crazy about Ohio State is after that loss at Iowa, you're like, all right, that's the sinking ship. If they lose to Purdue, we've seen this before. We saw it last year with Jake Diebler. We certainly saw it plenty of times in the late Holtman era where like one loss would sink them. But ever since then, they've been rolling. I mean, none of their games lately have been particularly close. Purdue, I thought they controlled most of that game. Penn State, that game was over within 10 minutes. And then Indiana, even today, they kept sustained a 7 to 15 point lead most of the second half. So really good work by Ohio State. I do think their depth is going to be an issue. I think outside of Chapman on the bench, there's really not much there. So they're going to need their stars to continue to play well to make a run in the Big Ten and of course the later tournament. But I think this is a huge step for Jake Diebler and the Buckeyes. I think everyone's going to pick Hoiberg or May as their coach of the year. I think Diebler needs to get some flowers here, though, Sean. I think a lot of people questioned him. A lot of people kind of thought it was a lazy hire by both Gene Smith and Ross Bjork, but I think he's kind of proven his coaching chop shot. I think this team's really gotten better, and I think they're playing really well right now. Outside the Iowa game, they've played excellent basketball since that Wisconsin game.
Yeah, they're just like really good. They have a good roster. I think Diebler's starting to coach more into his team's strengths than he was earlier in the season, and I think that they probably beat everybody in the Big Ten on their home floor right now, even Michigan if they were to play. But in terms of their road performances, maybe not. But they have gotten themselves into the field. It appeared to us from the outside looking in that this was a make it or break it year for Jake Diebler, and it looks very, very much like he's going to make it. So good for him in Ohio State. Good for Bruce Thorne, from a neutral point of view. I mean, he deserves to play in the NCAA tournament at
Totally.
least once.
As
Ohio
a
State,
Michigan fan, I could say that too. Yeah.
as an NCAA or as a program leader in points of a proud program, like if they did make it, we would have looked back in 10 years and be like, wow, like he never made the tournament, but looks like that's going to be the case for him. Elsewhere on Tuesday, Joe, we had Purdue go up to Chicago, and what was a very, very interesting game. The Boilers get across the line. They win 70-66, but Northwestern led pretty much the entire game, and it was a couple of clutch shots from C.J. Cox, which got Purdue over the line. Purdue, well, why don't we talk about this game first? Purdue really got away with one here.
Purdue did. And, I guess the difference between this game and Michigan's game there, because a lot of people, and Northwestern, for a team that has, I believe, 13 wins, maybe 14 after tonight, probably still 13. Either way, Sean,
Yeah,
for a sub
they're
500
losing.
team, for a sub 500 team, they're not as bad as they are, particularly and only because of Nick Martinelli. What I'll tell you though here, Sean, is Purdue didn't necessarily win this game at the end. I thought Northwestern kind of lost it. I thought their shot selection at the end of the game was poor. They did not get after loose balls the same way they were in most of the game, and the turnovers toward the end, I thought. were pretty reckless considering they only turned it over a total of 7 times the whole game. So Purdue, I'm not going to lie, Sean. I thought this game would have indicated they were completely out of control, but I think what we're going to talk about later, the fact that they're very likely to sink to the 7 seed, Sean, to put into perspective, Purdue hadn't lost a conference game this year until they lost to UCLA. I'm just looking at the date of that game. On January 20th, they were the last Big Ten team, aside from Nebraska, to be undefeated in the conference.
They were
They pretty much
17
lost.
and 1 on the season.
Yeah, they were 17-1, and I think they finished the regular season, Sean, at 23-8. So they've
So
gone
6
six
and
and
7.
seven,
Yeah.
and that's not even trying to do the mean. They've won 6 of their last 13 games, and I'll tell you, of those 7 losses, only 2 to 3 were particularly close. I think most of the others were pretty thorough, not necessarily dominations, but putrid defensive performances, like we saw today against Wisconsin.
And I think when Michigan went there, Joe, to Northwestern, I think that was very much like a fluke.
Mhm.
Northwestern made everything. I don't think they were doing a particularly good job on defense, but Michigan missed a few shots that they usually don't. And then Water found its level, maybe a little bit on the extreme end there with that, was it 21 straight possessions you scored on or something like that? But
Yeah,
I don't think there was anything fluky about this. If you're Chris Collins and Northwestern, like, you deserve to win this game.
yeah.
And then you sort of left the door open, and then CJ Cox, who does have a propensity to hit some clutch shots for Purdue this year. He did it against Nebraska, and he did it again here. But Purdue gets across the line, and Joe, you mentioned it. They did not get away with that one for the most part. John Blackwell and Nick Boyd and the Road Badgers pull off their third huge road win of the year, the Big Ten. Badgers win 97-93 at Mackey Arena. This is the fourth loss for Purdue at home this year. That's
And
something.
what's crazy about Wisconsin, shot of the top seven, Wisconsin's obviously in that top seven. They beat all of them except Nebraska. And what's even crazier to me, Sean, is Purdue killed them at Kohl Center. The
Yeah,
first game in January. I think they won by like 27 or like over 20 points, and it wasn't particularly close. That kind of shows the evolution of Wisconsin and the just absolute like putrid. Like this is my problem with Purdue. Ever since the Zach Edey era, which I guess has only been 2 years, they've limped to the finish line. And I know they got to the Sweet 16 last year, but that's all they're going to do this year,
yeah.
Sean. I really
At the
don't think.
most, I
I
think.
really don't think they're an Elite 8 team. And frankly, Sean, the way they've been playing, is it crazy to think they could fall to the 4 line?
Oh, definitely, definitely. With now I'd have to go back and look, but I think we had Vanderbilt pick up a road win against Tennessee today.
Yep.
Kansas won. St. John's won the Big East, so maybe they could get up there. I don't think Purdue can fall to a 5 because they have two, good victories, but I think there's a less than 50% chance they make the Sweet 16 at this point. If you're
Yeah.
talking about them playing a 13 seed, okay, well, Belmont lost, so everybody moves up one, and I think they should take care of a 13 seed. It's probably going to be someone like North Dakota State or Wright State, not like barely top 100 teams. And then if the 5 seed wins, Joe, and it's Arkansas, let's say, for example, like Purdue's not going to stop them. And it's going to be another game in the 90s and maybe even in the hundreds. And I don't see that going their way. Obviously, still a long way to go for them. But this was one of those Wisconsin performances, Joe. It seemed that way pretty early. And look, I don't think the Badgers are going to shoot like this every day. But I thought Purdue made a lot of shots too, especially a couple of tough ones. But this was a real, you know, shining light on what Wisconsin can do. And yeah, you can say, okay, you're not going to go 18 for 34 from three most games, but they've done this multiple times on the road. Of course, every game from now on is at a neutral court. But, Purdue made 11 threes. They shot 51% from the field. They won the rebounding battle by 12. They only turned it over 7 times. Like, I don't think this was necessarily like a bad Purdue performance, but they didn't get the job done. And Wisconsin, you get both of your guards into the 20s, which seems to be sort of a prerequisite for them to pick up a big win. But they were missing Nolan Winter here, probably their third best player.
Yeah.
And Purdue didn't really make that count.
Not only that, Sean, it just seemed like every time Purdue would get back in the game, Wisconsin responded, and it would be the exact same
Yeah.
formula. Like, get to the hole, Boyd and Blackwood. Of course, they always make terrific shots, but it seemed like Purdue was unprepared for it. And, it's semi-acceptable. It's the first time. This is the second time they've seen them. And let's face it, everyone's watched Wisconsin. I think it's a pretty predictable formula of what they do now. It's not easy to stop,
It's
but I'm
not
expecting
consistent, but it is, you know what they're going to do.
Purdue on senior day to be ready for that. And,
Yeah.
I'm going to put it to you this way, Sean. Purdue is like just February, March, the last 2 years, they fell apart. It's just a horrible trend. And I'm not making any declarative, oh, Matt Painter stinks or Braden Smith, TKR, Clough. They're all phenomenal players. But the bottom line is this, Sean. This team cannot get stops when it matters, and they allow way too many like 10-0 runs or 15-4 runs to be a team that is a threat not only in the Big Ten tournament, but the NCAA tournament as well.
Yeah, the you might look at this and say, "Oh, Purdue's 23 and 7, is it?
23-8.
23 and 8 and they're a top 20 team and they're going to be a protected seed and yeah, they're pretty good, but Joe, this was the number 1 team in the preseason with the preseason national player of the year. So it's fair to say this has been an underachievement and this is the end of this era of Purdue. Whether it's Zach Edey plus era, but there's a lot of players who have played a lot of games on Purdue on the floor between Fletcher Lawyer, Braden Smith, and Trey Kaufman-Renn, and I can guarantee you that they don't want to go out like this. And unless something changes, I think they're probably not going to make the second weekend. But this lined up, all the seniors, Final Fours in Indianapolis. I think that is a far, far out of reach right now. And then when it comes to defensively, Joe, like there were some simple things that they were not doing well. Like maybe don't let Nick Boyd go left. Like jump the screen,
Yeah.
force him right, force him to refuse it, and see if you can make him get rid of the ball. Like simple stuff like that. It was a little bit disappointing from Purdue. And the last thing I'll add on the Boilers here, Joe, is I think that their best offensive lineup and their best defensive lineup are two completely different things, and that really causes them some problems.
I agree. And the fact that, Sean, they've lost how many games? Hold on. Iowa State, Michigan, Michigan State, Wisconsin,
Illinois.
and Illinois.
So
They've lost
they've
five
lost
games at
5,
Mackey
6
Arena.
and 4 in the Big Ten at home.
Yeah, that's nuts.
Yeah.
And there have been worse Purdue teams that have gone way better than that in the Big Ten at home. That's what's crazy.
Look, I think you can give every team a one, mulligan at home. Stuff happens. Great
Yeah, it
team
happened to
comes in.
Michigan, happened to Illinois State.
Like things happen. You can get a great team or that makes a bunch of shots. Okay, but I would have told you that Purdue would have had 9 or 10 wins in the Big Ten at home this year. And now obviously they've done a fairly good job on the road. They've beaten Iowa on the road. They beat Nebraska on the road.
Nebraska.
They beat USC on the road. They beat Wisconsin on the road. Like they, beat Texas Tech on a neutral. They beat Alabama on the road. So they still have a great resume, but yeah, it doesn't feel right, Joe. It feels like these teams that sort of limp into the season, they get the seed because of what they did early, and everybody knows deep down that they're not as good as their seed, but that the committee just puts them there because they deserve to be. But yeah, disappointing for Purdue. Let's go back to Wednesday. Actually, no, we got them all. I mean, Washington beats USC. That sort of ends the Trojans' chance at an at-large. And then we had 2 rather close games on Thursday, Joe, which included the Michigan schools. Up first was the Wolverines, who go on the road to Carver Hawkeye and pull out a 3-point win, 71-68. I think Iowa's formula here was a little bit unsustainable, and it just happened to work. But is this more of you didn't play great and Michigan got across the line, or was there some underlying issues that you think some other teams could attack here?
I think, Michigan an issue that's been overlooked is Elliot Cadeau tends to turn the ball over a lot in certain games, and this was one of them. Another thing here, Sean, that I wasn't in love with as a Michigan fan, and then just as someone who generally observes college basketball and tries to project a good bracket, a good national champion, is Michigan was working like Yaxel Lendenberg was very efficient in the first half. Only had two shots. They weren't getting him more shots. And clearly Mara and Perez were having great games, but Michigan will not overcome bad guard play against most tournament teams. Now, Iowa certainly is a very tough tournament team on the road, so you
and
never
and a
overlook
and a
that.
unique team too. There's not a lot of teams like this Iowa team.
Yeah. And Iowa does such a good job. Coach McCollum's teams do an elite job of getting loose balls and, swiping balls if you're careless. Michigan was way too careless. Now, could you attribute that to the fact that they've already locked up the Big Ten and they were looking ahead to Michigan State? I think you can. But if you're playing another great defensive team in Michigan State, if this rears its head again, then we have to have a conversation. Right now, it's a little too early. Just one game without LJ. You were definitely going to have some road bumps. And I think the one piece of good news, Sean, unlike the Livers injury, which of course was more significant from a player standpoint, but the good news is Michigan has at least like 3 to 5 games before the NCAA tournament, and I think really 5 to 7. I'm including the first two rounds. I don't think Michigan will have much trouble the first two rounds. It's going to be
Yeah.
that Sweet 16 game
Well, you can't
where the
play
loss of
Wisconsin in the
LJ.
round of 32, so
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. That's the good news. So it's going to be that Sweet 16 game. I think that's the earliest you'll see in the actual tournament. Michigan might have some problems at the guard spot if Cadeau struggles, but
And was
again,
this
they
the
do have
first
time to
game
figure it
without
out.
him? This
It
was the
was.
and
So
yeah,
they do have
look,
time to figure this out.
look, you basically just gave away your rebounding margin here. Michigan
Yep.
38, Iowa 25 on rebounds, but you turned it over 18 times, they did 5. And if you can get in like a even game with Iowa, like they do have a few things that I thought maybe could cause Michigan some problems. They have like sneaky length, this Iowa team. They're not super athletic, but they could disrupt a little bit, I thought. But ultimately, you know, Michigan goes 53% from the field, 50% from three. I mean, and Iowa doesn't shoot it well at all. Like if you were minus 13 in the turnover department, Joe, I thought you would have probably said, this thing's going to be pretty close. And luckily for you, you got across the line. The other Michigan team, Joe, Michigan State, wins 91-87 against Rutgers. The first game of the season between these two was at the Jersey Mike's Arena, and Rutgers led pretty much the entire way until Jeremy Fears forced overtime, and then the Spartans won it there. Now, it was a little better of a performance in this one for Michigan State. They were always in control of the game, but they never really killed it off. And then while they were trying to get the seniors in on senior day, Steve Peichel and Rutgers thought they'd make this game a little closer. So Michigan State wins by 4. I don't think they were ever in true danger of losing this game like they were the first meeting, but Rutgers is not a team where they should be scoring 87 points against Michigan State.
No, and I think Rutgers did hit some lucky shots, but lucky shots aren't going to get you all the way to 87 either. So
Yeah.
to be honest with you, I think both Michigan teams were clearly looking ahead to Sunday. I think that's the only reasonable explanation as to why both played particularly poorly. Clearly, Michigan State had more liberty to get. I'll put it to you this way: Michigan State played that way at Carver Hawkeye. It would not have been pretty.
No,
Uh,
15-point loss probably.
yeah, so
Yeah.
hopefully for both teams' sake, just a look ahead. And I think, Sean, I'm gonna be honest with you, with the LJ Casey injury, you're probably looking at the most bet teams to win the Big Ten tournament are certainly Michigan. I bet Michigan State's second.
And when it comes to seeding, let's take a look at this. Obviously, you play each other tomorrow, but it's pretty likely that if you win, and Nebraska and Illinois also, we'd have to go back to the tiebreakers. But is there a chance that it'd be 1-4, and you'd potentially have round 3 in the semifinals?
No, because I think, Sean, the way it'll work
They
is
they
Nebraska.
but they lost to Nebraska, so they wouldn't have the tiebreaker. Now, what did they do against
So
Illinois? They beat Illinois, so they'd be
they
third.
beat Illinois, so MSU would be third, is what
Yeah.
I'm saying. So I think the earliest they'd see each other is the final. But more importantly here, Sean, I think Michigan State kind of lucked out in the sense that, it's very likely now that Wisconsin's the 5 seed locked in there. Um, well, I guess barring an Illinois disastrous loss is locked in there because Nebraska beat Wisconsin. But barring that, Sean, Michigan State's in a really good position for the Big Ten tournament because the sixth seed, if they do lose to Michigan, is right
UCLA.
now Purdue or UCLA
It'll be
because they beat
UCLA if they
Purdue.
can hold on
Yeah.
against USC right now.
Yep. And then Sean, the seventh seed would be Purdue, who Michigan State I thought played a really good game against it. I thought Purdue was pretty fortunate uh to be able to keep that within one possession and chuck a last second shot for the win. So Michigan State, I'm going to be honest with you, Sean. I think it comes down to the final. If they beat Nebraska, like that's kind of all it is to me. I don't think that UCLA or apologies, Nebraska's the two. I don't particularly see maybe Nebraska, Purdue. Who really knows? But Michigan State, Sean, they're my favorite on that side of the bracket. Like
That's
in the
that's
two,
probably
three.
why they're the second best odds to win it, Joe, because they wouldn't play
Mhm.
Michigan until the championship. The sixth seed, their first game would likely be against UCLA, and then I think there might be some funny business in that 2, 7, and 10 pod, because Indiana has beaten both the teams, or they beat Purdue, and then they came awfully close against Nebraska. We had Purdue go on the road to Nebraska and beat them, so I think there could be some funny business there, which if I think if either Purdue or Indiana make it to Michigan State in the semifinals, that is going to be a total easy Spartans win because Michigan
Yeah.
State's one day less in the legs and all that. But yeah, I think the bottom of that bracket could see a little bit of funny business. Obviously, we will go ahead and preview that more thoroughly once we have a bracket. Um, we did most of the games today, or the only two games have gone final. Joe, we have two games at halftime. Both of those look the way that they're doing, but we're not going to get caught here, recapping a game that's not over yet. We've got a couple of games tomorrow. Let's do a quick preview here, and then we can get out of here. Four games tomorrow. Obviously, all eyes are on Michigan State and Michigan in the rematch at the Chrysler Center. Not a whole lot on the line here when it comes to you know yeah, we already have a Big Ten champion. Michigan's already on the number one line. In terms of Michigan State, there might be a slight opening on the one line because of what happened in Milwaukee today with UConn, but Florida beat Kentucky, so I'm not sure Michigan State could catch Florida. But in terms of getting a two seed, Michigan State, this would take it a long way. And Michigan is trying to keep it rolling going into Chicago, but we saw what happened in the first meeting. Big Michigan halftime lead. Michigan State comes pretty much all the way back, and then it goes right back to what it was at halftime. But we talked about both teams on Thursday, Joe, not potentially playing their best. I would tend to think that they both put up better efforts here.
I agree, and I think this is a game where Michigan's guard depth is really going to be tested. If Jeremy Fear stays out of foul trouble, I think Michigan State could keep this game really close. And frankly, I don't know why this line opened at 11 and a half. It's gone down to 10 and a half since then, but I think this game could really come down to the wire. I think Michigan State kind of could be Michigan's kryptonite in the sense that they will make Michigan pay for the turnovers. Iowa did a really good job of that on Thursday. I think Michigan State will do an even better job of that at Chrysler, especially since they've seen each other. In the first matchup, Sean, Michigan State had a lot of good shots they passed up. I don't think the way they've been playing, they're going to be doing that in this game. But at the same time, I don't think they're necessarily going to have an easy time stopping Michigan's bigs. And if Kohler gets in foul trouble, like they can't have Kohler or Fears in foul trouble in this game. I'll put to you that bluntly, Sean.
Yeah, I think that can probably be said for anybody who plays Michigan, but Michigan, there is a little bit of a profile to disrupt Michigan here with Michigan State. Now, in that first game, I'm trying to remember it. I did a stream. Did you? I think you got to 50 at halftime, or close to it. 40.
It was 42 to 26 at
Okay.
halftime.
So yeah, I don't think Michigan's going to score that many points in the first half. I think Michigan State will put up a better effort, but I do think it'll be one of those pretend close games that Michigan push out to 15-18 by the end of it. But in terms of Michigan State, if you want to get in the mix for a one seed, why don't you go on the road to the number one or number two team in the country and knock them off? And then in terms of Michigan, I think they're already on the number one line, even if they were to lose here and then to Iowa or Ohio State in the 1-8 game on Friday. But still, you know, At this point, Joe, it does look like the Big Ten tournament might be the Michigan Invitational, but maybe we can set that in even further with a win here. All right, the other big game tomorrow is Iowa at Nebraska. Joe, the Hawkeyes are safe in the tournament right now, but they might be lacking a little bit of a defining factor for the reason of being in the tournament. And with a ton of teams losing, there's a big chance to go up some seed lines here. And then in terms of Nebraska, they are trying to lock up that number 2 seed and to avenge a loss. They got beat up pretty bad in a game in the 50s at Carver Hawkeye the first time around. So this one will wrap up the Big Ten regular season. Joe, what are you looking forward to here?
It's probably just Nebraska to get back to even keel because they didn't look good against UCLA. They really played poorly the last time they played Iowa. They're extremely sloppy with the ball.
Yeah, I don't think
So,
Iowa played particularly great there either, but they won.
no, that's what I'm saying. So, for both teams, just get back into form. I think Iowa played pretty well at points on Thursday against Michigan, but they were also sloppy and they were a little too physical fouling wise. I know a lot of the fans would disagree, but I think this is a game Iowa's gonna have to make Nebraska earn it, right? Don't get them to the foul line. Nebraska is an extremely disciplined team defensively, and they hit their foul shots. So let's not give Nebraska any extra assistance, especially in front of the Pinnacle Bank Arena. So I do think Nebraska will end up winning this game, Sean. And to give my prediction for Michigan State, I think Michigan does not cover. I think they do win. But back to this game, Sean, I think Nebraska probably wins by a good 10 to 12 points. I think Iowa has chances to keep it close, but I think Nebraska will hit one too many three-pointers and lock up potentially the number two seed of the Big Ten tournament. At worst, they will be the 3 seed. And barring an Illinois calamity, which I don't foresee in College Park, looks like Nebraska. What's funny, Sean, that Nebraska Purdue matchup could be a really good like Friday night game, and same
Yeah.
with Michigan State versus Purdue or UCLA or whatever. Like that, those have potential to be some really good games.
Yeah, the Purdue Nebraska game at the bank was one of the best games of the regular season. Purdue looked like they were going to blow them out. They blew the lead, and then they won it in overtime. In terms of here, Joe, I'm going to go a similar score line. I'm going to go like 72-63. I just think Nebraska played so bad in that first game, and they still found themselves in a coin toss late. Like they were not hitting any shots, and they still had a chance to win to Carver Hawkeye. I think if they can get like a little bit of clean offense here, I think they win. Um, but yeah, I think Iowa keeps it close. They don't get blown out, but they will fall here. All right, Joe. Well, that is all we have for you today. In terms of some stuff coming up, I'm not going to do a Missouri Valley stream tomorrow, mostly because the 5th and the 6th seed made it to that championship game, and I don't know as much about those teams as I do if it was Belmont and Bradley. So we're going to do bracketology instead at noon. And then we're going to start getting some conference tournament previews out Sunday. And then Joe and I will be back on Monday for the Big Ten tournament preview. And we will unveil our, not just us, we did it with a couple of other creators, but we have 3 all-conference teams for the Big Ten. We did 7 players on each, and we'll unveil those Monday on the show. So thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.